All right, we are live. I'll give a couple more minutes for some more people to join, and then we'll get started. Let's go. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. My name is Josh Pade. I am a Democratic candidate for Congress here in our 1st Congressional District. It's wonderful to have you all here today. We are going to have a very exciting discussion about the economy, about COVID, about trade. We've got a couple of great guests, so we'll get right into it. First off, if you have any questions for me or our guests, please feel free to put them in the Zoom chat or to comment on Facebook with your questions, and we'll try to make sure we get to all of them. And we'll get started. My name is Josh Pade. We're joined right now by Doug Rebout. Doug is the president of the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association. He is also a member of the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change and Board of Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection. Welcome, Doug. It's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you.
Doug, you experience firsthand what's happening with our farming community, what's happening across different sectors of our economy. You have a lot of valuable insight, both your subject matter expertise as well as personal experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what's been going on recently within your world?
Well, I farm over here by Janesville. I farm with my 2 brothers and my mother. We're partners in the farm, have 1 nephew. So farming is my full-time job when I'm not going to meetings. And we raise mostly corn and soybeans for cash crop and raise some steers and also do some custom heifer raising on our farm. And then my side jobs are, like you said, I am president of Wisconsin Corn Growers and on a couple different state committees and boards, the Climate Change Task Force and the Department of Ag. And so, yeah, these last 4 months have been keeping me, 4 or 5 months, whatever it's been, has been keeping me pretty busy, being on different meetings for the COVID and trying to figure out how to deal with that through agriculture.
What are some of the challenges you're seeing now, both with agriculture in general and then agriculture in the time of COVID?
Well, agriculture in general, I mean, like I tell people, agriculture is something that every year it's something different. We have our good years, our bad years, and our break-even years. And as farmers, we've come to know that, we've come to expect that. And so those good years, we're investing back into our farms and putting that money back in. So those other years when we don't have as much disposable income, we can keep getting through. So farming has always been an up and down thing. Now, once COVID hit, well, even before COVID, I mean, dealing with trade and stuff like that has really affected our prices, everything that's been going on there. And so we're dealing with that, and we've had historically low prices on a lot of our products, uh, from anything from dairy to the cash crops and everything. And so as a member of Wisconsin Corn Growers, we spend we take a couple trips a year out to Washington, D.C. to talk with our legislators about our important issues that we have. And trade has always been one of them. But yeah, once COVID hit, then that just threw everything up in the air. Because especially for something like dairy, which we were dairy up until March 1st when we sold our cows. So that happened right before the COVID. But something like dairy, you saw videos and pictures of farmers dumping milk, which was a very sad sight to see. And a lot of people couldn't understand why that was happening, but they were yet they were limiting what you could buy in a grocery store. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the processors were all set for, processing for food industry, the schools, restaurants and stuff like that. And they can't just flip a switch and just switch and make everything to send to the grocery stores. And that's kind of agriculture in general. People say, well, why don't you just stop, producing this or stop doing that? Agriculture is not like a General Motors plant or, some of those plants like that where they say, okay, we've got too much going on or we've got too much supply out there, we're just going to shut down. Agriculture, we can't do that. Cows have to be milked every day. Our crops, we're planning 1, 2, 3 years in advance. And we can't just flip that switch and say, oh, we're not going to do that this year. So that's where a lot of the issues have been coming in farming.
Gosh, I can imagine. So yeah, I used to work in the grocery business, and a lot of our customers were farmers, and there would always be a disconnect where the farmer would come to the grocery store and ask us about the price of pork or the price of milk, and as a grocery store, by the time we're buying it, it's two levels at least removed from the farmer, and it's a lot just not in your control. And as a retailer, that was a struggle, and just thinking about public policy, it makes it very hard to kind of manage. You talked a little bit about trade. We just implemented USMCA. How is it looking to recover from some of the problems with China, particularly in the soy industry, as well as what comes next after USMCA? It kind of had a pretty broad bipartisan appeal to get that passed, but we have a lot more to go.
Yeah. There before like USMCA got signed and before phase 1 of the China deal and some of these other deals have been signed, we're sitting there in agriculture just looking out going, where's that light at the end of the tunnel? They all of a sudden all these trade deals kind of got stopped, to put it bluntly. And we're just sitting there going, we need something. We need, if we can see that future there, we're happy. And there for a while, we weren't seeing anything. The USMCA signing, that was very big for us because Mexico and Canada, with the proximity of them, they are our biggest customers for egg products throughout the US. It's not just Wisconsin or, stuff like that. They are our number one, buyers of our products. And so that was huge to get that deal signed. Is it a perfect deal? There is no such thing as a perfect, deal out there. But at least we have something on paper and we have something to go by. And the same thing with China, the phase 1 signing. there's something there. We're hoping to build on that with China and all the other countries out there, because as farmers, we're very good at what we do, and we produce more than what we can consume here in the U.S. And we know there is a need around the world, and we just want to be able to get those products out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, thinking about how, particularly here in Wisconsin, we can be connected to the global marketplace in a much more efficient and effective way. One of the things that we've looked at, is the rest of the Asian economy, so Vietnam and other East Asian countries, and opening up those marketplaces more to Wisconsin dairy and agricultural products, particularly soy, is an opportunity I think that's on the table if we pursue it. Is that something that you've seen that you'd like to see happen?
Yeah, because those can be huge markets out there, and we a lot of times we look at, for agriculture, we look at dairy, and that's easy to do here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, it's the dairy state. For cheese, like I've heard, if Wisconsin was a country, we'd be the fourth largest country in the world for producing cheese, and that's just from Wisconsin. So it's easy to look at dairy, but a lot of things that people don't look at is with corn, like ethanol. We get ethanol into these other countries. It helps us. It helps our economy here. And then ethanol is something that can help with the environment in these other countries because it's a cleaner burning fuel. So it's something that's good all around. And that, Eastern Asia, Asia and the countries over there, like I said, Vietnam, Korea, all those, yeah, those are huge countries to try and get into.
Excellent. Now, you are on the task force for climate change. Can you kind of talk a little bit more? We've got a question from someone from Kenosha, Joe, and he asked how climate change is affecting your farming business, whether it's from change in the rain seasons or floods or temperature, insects, the gamut. How have things changed? How are they changing? What have you seen?
Well, yeah, it does affect us a lot because, like you said, all those things that you mentioned, none of those are, all of a sudden you see that huge switch, in temperature from this to that. They're all, over time, slow switches, but over time they do add up to big changes for us. But as we go, we are adapting to it. So, for like the warmer weather and the longer growing seasons. I mean, that's, that we've just learned to plant different varieties of corn and soybeans and stuff to adapt to that. But on the other end, I guess what my role on the climate change task force is what can farmers do to help climate change, help slow it down, help turn that tide back. And a lot of it is, like I said, farmers, we're very good at what we do, and we do a good job out there. We are the true environmentalists out there because this ground that we're working on and stuff, it's stuff that we're raising our families on. So we're not going to do anything to hurt it. And so, we're trying to do these good things. And, some of this stuff is, like no-till, where growing up, I used to go out there and you plow up that field, and you disc it a couple times, you color mulch it, and you make sure it's that nice powder before you plant the seed. Well, we've learned that now we go in and we just do what's called a lot of no-till planting, where we don't plow that up anymore. So we're sequestering all that carbon into the soil. We're not releasing it, which is helping climate change. And it's also helping our pocketbook because we're not going across the field as many times. I'll be honest about that too. But also by not working that soil up, when we do get these heavy rains and these runoffs and stuff like that, that soil is more protected. So when you see the water running down the ditches and stuff after some of these hard rains, it's a cleaner water because it's running across the top of it. It's not taking that soil with it. And so those are plant and cover crops. So as soon as, we come in and take that crop off, soybeans or wheat or corn or whatever, weather depending, you go in and you plant rye or different crops. There's all different types of things that you can plant, so you get that next crop growing up and protecting that soil. It's not just that bare soil sitting there through the winter. So when you get that snow melt in the spring, again, you're preserving that soil, and it's also adding nutrients into the soil and helping that soil out. So those are some of the things where farming is impacted by climate change.
That's amazing. Are there any opportunities that you see for farmers, in either the green energy space or different, utilizing different ag technologies to actually make more money from existing operations, or finding new sources of revenue via moving to green energy, or different forms of precision agriculture, et cetera?
Well, there are things, green energy. There are things that farmers can do, but it's not widely accepted by the neighbors. You got the wind turbines.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are against those. And also what's coming out now and, becoming more popular, you see these fields of 300, 400, 500 acres of your solar panels. And here on our farm, we talked to one of those companies a couple of years ago. And I mean, the price that they're paying to put those solar panels on, if a farmer could take some of their less desirable soil where they have problems and go and put something like a solar farm, and that's what they're called, solar farms, on that soil, it can help in a lot of ways, because you're cutting down the acres, so we're cutting down the production. So all this overproduction we have, we're kind of helping mitigate that a little bit. But this land that we're not being real productive on, we're getting paid to have those solar farms, and those companies are paying good. And it's a way for the farmers to help and, make up for the other losses or whatever else is happening.
Yeah, I was at a round table a few years ago, 4 years ago, I think it was, and there were some people from Toyota, and they were talking about they have like different hydrogen powertrains they're working on for commercial transportation, so semi trucks powered by hydrogen, and they were sourcing their hydrogen from methane this is in California, from dairy farms, from manure. And I mean, like I said, we have a lot of dairy manure here in Wisconsin.
And we do have some of those methane digesters here in Wisconsin. The issue with those is it costs so much to put them in and keep them up, that you have to be one of those 4,000 or plus dairies almost, unless you're getting all these grants and stuff, and to really make it work and pay for itself. That's why up just north of Madison, there was a project here a couple of years ago where they took like 5 or 6 different dairy farms, and they're piping all the manure to one central location and have a methane digester there. So there are ways of getting around it if you are smaller farms, but like I said, you have to make it pay for itself.
Yeah. I talked to a farmer a couple months ago, and we were discussing the challenge of being sustainable and the size of your farm. So, there's challenges with very large farm operations and their impact on the environment, but they also have the ability and the scale to do things and put in place different infrastructures that are better for the environment, that small farms don't have the resources to put into place. So it ends up that smaller farms end up going to techniques that are less environmentally friendly, just because they don't have the money or the resources to do that.
Well, I guess I wouldn't say that. I mean, there's definitely a place for all sizes of the farms out here. And they, like I said, they all do a good job because, whether I have 4,000 acres or I've got 400 acres, like I said, I'm raising my family on this, so we're taking great care of this farm.
Mhm.
Yeah, those bigger farms might have a few more resources, but that liability that lies within there, and they're so much more restricted on what they can and can't do because of the size of their farm.
Mhm.
So I mean, there are pluses and minuses to all size farms, but like I said, there's definitely a place for all of them out here.
Great. And then very briefly, can you talk about some of the work you do with the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection? What is that? What's kind of their scope? What are they doing? Kind of shed a
Well,
little light on that.
well, this is something I'm just learning. I just got appointed here about a month ago. I've only had one board meeting, and so being on the board of directors for DATCAP, we go and we don't sit there and say, okay, here's where to spend your money. That's not what this board does. This board just kind of oversees the different departments and what's going on policy wise is a lot of it. My last board meeting, we went and we voted to have public hearings on raising fees for dog licenses or something like that. I mean, you say Department of Ag, but Trade and Consumer Protection is a huge part of this. And like I said, it's so huge, and I'm just learning all this. But that's what we do. And then on the agriculture side, some of the things that have been big in the past is animal sighting laws. It's the job of the board and the department to have all these public hearings out there for that, to make sure that these laws and everything that are passed are feasible, and that they're being handled right by having all these public hearings. And DATCAP, like I said, it's huge. Some of the things that we oversee, there's a state veterinarian, so oversee all the vets in the state. One department is, got something like the Alice in Dairyland, oversees all the, the fairs, stuff like that. One of the departments, meat inspectors, all the licensing for stuff like that. They're even in charge of licensing for hotels and restaurants, and it's just overwhelming amount of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to learning all of this. I, I've been appointed to it, but yet once the state Senate comes back in session, I got to go in front of the state Senate to get officially confirmed for the position. But I'm still doing the work until then.
All right. Well, good luck with that. And one final question. Is there anything you could see that the federal government you'd like to do, a high priority from the federal government, you're top of mind, that can be changed from a policy standpoint or administrative standpoint coming from the federal government?
Well, I mean, we already talked about trade, so that's huge. Keep trade stuff going. And our other big issue that we work on every year is infrastructure. And for us, and people don't really think about it, it's the locks and dams on the Mississippi rivers, or the Mississippi River, and a bunch of the other rivers with the locks and dams. These locks and dams were built 70, 80 years ago, and they weren't built for today's traffic. And so we need to get the money, the funding, to rebuild these and redo these so we can get more of our products up and down the river, our products coming up, our fertilizer and everything. And, because that's going to help with trade, getting everything out of here. And it's also going to help the roads, because the more you send up and down the river, the less trucks we have on the roads to help, protect our roads somewhat.
Great point. All right.
And,
Doug, well,
one other thing, another one is these small refinery waivers that the EPA is in charge of. That's something else that we're working with our elected officials to try and make those so they're handled the way that they're meant to be handled. And right now that's not happening.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Doug. It was really great talking to you. Really grateful for you to be with us and take some time out of your Sunday to talk about farming and agriculture and COVID. And we're all going to get through this together, right?
We will get through it. We're a strong country and we will get through it.
Yes, we will. Take care. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Try to just unmute. Mark, I think can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining. We had talked earlier, you're in the midst of doing some moving. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon. Folks, everyone, this is Mark, Mark Wistar. You are the owner of House of Nutrition and Wellness here in downtown Kenosha. Speaking of that, I'm in downtown Kenosha right now. I left the key card to my office at home, so I walked over to the Rustic Road Brewery and came upstairs to their event space to.
I thought I recognized that brick wall.
Yes, this is in a brewery. So I'm very grateful that we were able to do that. But in addition to that, you have served on the Kenosha Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. You were board member of the History Center and the Downtown Business Improvement District. Mark, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little about what you do and who you are.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name's Mark Wistar, own the House of Nutrition and Wellness. I purchased it in 2014, but I've owned several buildings and still do in the downtown area. So I've always been pretty active in the downtown. And that's about it. I'm, like you stated, I'm also on the History Center board. I worked for 10 years on the for the Mahone Jazz Festival. Helped run the VIP section for 10 years. Things like that.
Great. Yeah, downtown Kenosha was a big part of my growing up. My grandmother worked at, she was a merchant with Morrison's. Anyone who's been in Kenosha for a long time remembers Morrison's. It was a children's clothing store, which also kind of doubled as my daycare in the time. My mom would drop me off and I'd help out and eat lunch with grandma in the fitting room. And it's still in business today in downtown Kenosha. Crystal's, a clothing store. Lou's dad, Sam, I think he came either from the same village or near the same area where my grandma did in Italy. So they knew each other. So I kind of grew up in this area quite a bit.
Everybody knows everybody, don't they?
Yep. And being part of the business development, downtown Kenosha's been through some ups and downs, a lot of changes over the years. Can you talk a little bit about, what's kind of happening downtown? What are the promises? What are the trip falls that could be happening here? And, one of the things, I'm running for Congress. One of the things that I've been passionate about from a policy standpoint, not just from the federal level, but at every level, is we have all these mid-sized cities like Kenosha, Racine, Janesville, that grew up around one or two factories. Those factories left, and really recreating that sense of opportunity, of high wage jobs, of having a growth engine and ecosystem of the economy is really a challenge that's almost uniquely American. We have this level of city, of those factory towns is something that America kind of blossomed, over the 150 years between the Civil War and basically the 1970s. So if you want to talk a little bit about what's happening and what you see as the challenges and opportunities.
Well, it seems right now like downtown Kenosha at least is in a bubble, kind of a protective bubble. I mean, things were started before COVID, like Herzing University, the microbrewery going in on 58th and 7th, and the APIS, from the Grease and Honey Group, that just opened. So there's still a lot of people coming downtown. There's still development there. If you go further out, though, I think there's a lot of issues. You're starting to see store closings, and I don't know how many of these people have gotten help with grant money or PP money, but you're just starting to see more of that. And I know restaurants are having a particularly hard time. In downtown Kenosha, they don't seem to be doing too bad. Rustic Roadhouse, I see expanded out to the street a little bit. They took over a couple parking spots. I think that's really, smart of them to do that. Because right now, I think most people, I myself have not eaten in a restaurant since, early March. So when I eat at a restaurant, it's going to be outside. And, the challenge is what's going to happen when the weather starts turning. We only have, a couple more months where it's going to be feasible to eat that much outside. So then, comes into play what's going to happen from there. Is it just going to go back to all curbside, or what are we going to do from there?
Yeah, my wife and I went to try the Apple's.
Oh, the APIS?
The APIS.
Yeah,
Just the other day, and we were talking to them. They're trying to figure out ways to extend outside, but they have a rooftop, so getting heaters and coverings to extend that season as long as they can. And knock on wood, we have a warm October, and they can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we look at Kenosha. You're saying going out. If you look at the uptown area of Kenosha and the area around the old Chrysler site, which they're currently trying to put into place a plan to redevelop that area, and then even going stretching across the district in Racine, the areas around some of the old factories there, that they're working hard to reimagine that area. One bright spot that is actually a good example and is part of the district is Oak Creek. The kind of the Drexel Town Square
Right.
there is a really good idea of how they took an old area and made it into a new center for restaurants, for shopping, for living, things like that.
It's really a benchmark, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, Oak Creek's one of the fastest growing areas of the district, of the state. So it's a good sort of set of ideas of how you can do it in a good way. What have you seen with COVID? As a small business owner, what has been working well for you, both from just managing it, but also like whether it's the federal government programs or some of the local programs that have been happening, and what do you see as needs to happen over these next couple of months? Because clearly COVID's going to be with us, probably till next summer. Hopefully not that long, but you never know.
Well, I've seen a lot of businesses adapting. They took the time when they shut down to facilitate going online with sales. We didn't do that. We were considered an essential business, so we stayed open. So what we had in the beginning of March, it was like, like Black Friday at my store for a while. It was people were coming in and cleaning out the shelves and, trying to find products for their immune systems. But now things have leveled out, and people are coming in, and I'm just starting to see that typically they may buy 2 or 3 different vitamin supplements. Now they'll take one that they really want and they say, well, I gotta consider my rent, so I have to come back. So we're doing everything we can to reduce prices as much as possible and just be more efficient in the way we're doing things. So, we can withstand this. I know when it first started out, I told my staff, I think this is going to be one of the biggest challenges the House of Nutrition has ever faced. And it was started in 1947 in Chicago, came up to the Kenosha area in the 1960s, was an uptown, and then it came downtown. But I think this is going to be a real, a huge challenge for us. But then again, trying to do research and find out the best supplements and different things people all over the world are using right now to combat, the coronavirus. I mean, until we have a immunization shot, what we can do for immune systems to weather that and get through this.
Absolutely. I know that I've been much more conscious of taking supplements and vitamins just out of good practice, right?
It's,
Keeping yourself healthy and strong.
that's our best defense right now, I feel.
Absolutely. What do you see? Have you had any supply chain issues?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
And yeah, a lot of the immunity products, our vitamins are all made in the US, but the ingredients come from the best places to get them, anywhere in the world. So there's going to be some from India, from Europe, from China, if that's the best place to get an herb. And yeah, we've seen a lot of challenges with that. Of course, the hand sanitizer, things like that, but
Yeah.
that goes without saying.
Yeah, you're seeing hand sanitizer like catching up
Yeah.
with everything.
Yeah.
Before like there was a while there when you bought hand sanitizer, it was just basically vodka or something in a jar with a squirt.
Right.
Great. Yeah, so I've been talking to a lot of folks. Wisconsin has our tourism industry is huge. In 2019, we had over 113 million people visit. It's billions of dollars, and that's something that you don't get back. So it's not someone where I can't go to the store for this month. I'm just going to buy it next month. You lose July, you lose the year for a lot of folks. And I've been talking to small business owners that they don't know how they're going to survive because they're relying on cyclical businesses. Is that something that you've seen with other business owners or just around the area?
Yes, I have. I think we were talking earlier about a friend of yours that has a shop, and they rely so much on summer sales. And anybody in that position where they've had to make it through this summer and not get what they need to sustain themselves into the fall and winter, that's going to be rough for them. Usually our slow months are the summer because people feel good, they're out doing things. They don't worry about as much about getting the cold or flu in the summer, but of course this summer's been the exception. So we hope going into the fall and winter again, people will continue to be mindful of taking good supplements so they can build up their immune system and make it through this. Sleep's another big problem. Stress. Oh, stress is huge.
Absolutely. We did a town hall on behavioral health, and a lot of folks that are home, that are alone, are isolated. I mean, I personally have an aunt who's in an assisted living center, and
yeah,
they're very isolated. It is a tremendous challenge.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking broadly more as a small business owner, what would you like to see? I mean, if I get elected, I hope to serve on the small business committee. My wife's an entrepreneur. As a small business owner, what could the federal government be doing better to, particularly in this time, to help people start a small business or sustain their small business, both through COVID and just in general, in a time where, whenever the economy has a downturn, credit becomes harder to get, keeping good employees becomes harder to get. Like, what are things that from the federal government could be doing that encourages and grows and fosters an environment that allows people like you to exist?
Well, I guess making the small business loans easier to get, they were so difficult. I tried to fill out a couple of them starting out, and by the time I got it in, by the time I got all the information I needed, there was no more money left. And I think a lot of people found that. And I guess now that they've had some time and hopefully they've analyzed this situation a little better and find out who are the people that really need, sorry, can't get down. Find out the people that, like we were talking about, depend on the summer business to carry them through, and find out those businesses that are hurting and try to get them some help. Make sure they get it so they can come back from this.
Absolutely. I often say that we don't have a very good direct-to-consumer federal government. Just navigating, usually you have to get the federal paperwork, but then go find a private administrator through a bank, and that's not just with small businesses. That's, if you're doing a mortgage or any sort of, using government assistance to get something is very complicated, and it makes it very difficult. I've talked to folks that were able to get some of the small business money for the Paycheck Protection Act, and that money dried out really quickly.
Oh, it did, yeah. And you couldn't go into the bank to get help. You had to do it by phone, and it was just very difficult.
And one of the things that I've noticed, we just talked with a farmer where they have to plan out years ahead of time. I used to work for a grocer where, at this point, we've already determined what we're going to buy through the end of the year for holidays. I worked for a clothing retailer, same thing. Like, they're already thinking about next March, what's happening. So, the lack of certainty is really a challenge. And I mean, honestly, there's only so much the federal government can do, but at least providing a baseline of what could be available seems to be reducing a little bit of that uncertainty for businesses so they can at least plan.
Yes.
One of the things that we've been talking about is having sort of automatic triggers for either aid to small businesses or aid to individuals triggered by, particularly with this pandemic, triggered by the crisis. So rather than waiting every couple of months for Congress to pass a bill and negotiate with the president for something that we already need to know needs to happen, you can just make it automatic and have those levers moved.
Well, we're lucky downtown also that there's been, a few programs now that small businesses downtown have been able to get and take advantage of to help them out. So that's just for the local downtown area.
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you wanted to talk a little bit more what you heard, I work a little bit with downtown Kenosha. I know some of the folks that work with that and they have the small business fund that they were helping. They also they already are existing grant administrators for, if you want to make the face of your store nicer, things like that. They match funds for that. Are there any other programs that are happening in the area that you're aware of that people should know about?
Not right at the moment. I mean, they reacted very quickly. About a month and a half ago, they used to put the flower baskets downtown, but they didn't put them up this year, so they could use the money to give some of these forgivable loans out to the different businesses. And I thought that was really good that they reacted so quickly and did that. And they've tried to do their best to help out with different things downtown. They have virtual meetings that you can join to learn how to do things online and just help businesses out. So they've been very proactive. We're really lucky.
Yeah, I'm biased. I work with them, but I volunteer with them. They're pretty amazing people, really dedicated to keeping downtown Kenosha thriving.
Yes.
thinking about other challenges for small businesses, healthcare is such a big challenge from a cost perspective, as well as, depending on how many employees you have, it's difficult to manage. What are some of the things that you would like to see as a small business owner to improve both the cost and the administration of healthcare for yourself or your associates?
Well, it would be nice if we could have like a certain group of small businesses where we could pool and get help get healthcare for our employees. Something like that, I think would be really worthwhile. I've looked into it before, and just doing it on my own is, it's way too expensive for me to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I've actually gone through the shop system on the healthcare.gov, and it is not easy to navigate or affordable all the time. And
Yeah.
something that we could really easily extend healthcare to a lot of folks just by giving you the same sort of buying power that a Target or a Walmart have
Right.
would be tremendous, because a lot of people folks work for small businesses. That's
Yeah. And they need something. And they're not, typically, I mean, my staff is for the most part pretty young. So they're not going to be a big drain typically on the healthcare system like, somebody older would be. But, I guess it depends on the group that you have.
How has thinking about pre-COVID a little bit, just the process of finding good talent and training good talent, that was something that we were dealing with going into COVID, and hopefully the economy comes back quickly, but still being able to place jobs and to apply skills is something we need to address. What have you
Yeah.
seen from an employer standpoint could be improved?
Okay, now you're talking pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the job market was tight. We were lucky. We had a good staff, and we had to lay everybody off but one to start with to make it through this. But we've gotten everybody back now, except for one person, and I would have taken her back, but she moved on to another position in a different state. But it was, I was hearing it was difficult to find people. People were asking me all the time, if I knew of anybody. So I know it was difficult to find people. Now, post-COVID or in COVID, it would probably be a lot easier right now to find people. But
Yeah,
then how are you going to keep them if, once things come back?
I know. I mean, having spent a long time working in retail, I know a lot of folks that they've been furloughed just because a lot of retail operations are not operating at full capacity, and this is at like the corporate level too. They don't have the need for that support system,
Right.
because they're online, and frankly, right now a lot of those businesses don't know what post-COVID looks like.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of the specialty retailers that have declared bankruptcy or on the verge of declaring bankruptcy. Their post-COVID life is probably going to be much smaller, much slimmer, a different retail experience, both from the real estate side as well as the operational side. So that is a challenge that needs to be addressed. We don't know what it's going to look like in the next 2 years. But
I don't know if you read in the Kenosha News today, they had an article about Canada and how they deal with COVID and how they segregate anybody coming in, like if they're allowed to come in from the United States, they have a strict 2-week quarantine, and they really watch it. They call the people. They will get fined quite a bit of money if they violate any of these rules they have. And in this country, we just haven't, we haven't done enough. It's a shame, but it's been politicized. And I mean, the least we could do, I think, is wear the mask. I mean, we're not asking to get a shot right now or take a pill, just wear a mask. If that does it, I think it should be unpatriotic not to wear a mask right now. Other countries are going to come back before us, and they're going to have an advantage now. And I think that's going to be a big problem. So
It really is. When we think about the way we frame it, it's so important. And something that I've been talking to folks is this is really about us bringing America ahead of everybody else. You look at New Zealand's gone 100 days without a COVID case. And now that, Europe is starting to move on, they're investing in output and manufacturing. And even a lot of American companies are going to have to make decisions about where they're going to put their investments. They're not going to put it domestically if we're not open. They're going to put it in countries that are open.
Yeah.
So it really is, let's all band together to make, America lead in the world. And that's what it really should be about.
It should, yeah.
Really focus.
Look, in World War II, they had rationing for the war effort, and everybody got behind it. If we would just get behind it and get through this as quickly as possible, we can go back to our lives, save as many businesses as possible. But if we're not all cooperating, it's difficult.
Yeah, you think about history, though, all those, do your part, GPA posters, everyone just kind of having victory gardens, all those things that they did to mobilize a national mobilization. And really that requires leadership at every level, not just, we look at the president, but like president, Congress, state governments, everyone just saying, all right, guys, like, let's go get them. We got to kind of restore that attitude to do that. And if everyone stepped up, wore a mask, kept distant, washed their hands, quarantine when they need to quarantine, we had national testing and contact tracing. So, if you've been exposed, we could have this thing under control in probably 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even sooner. And then we'd be open. Then we wouldn't be talking about.
Oh, yeah. I have to tell you something. On my way home, there's this hall, and all these people were crowding in. I'm thinking, wow, is that a wedding reception? And it said pro wrestling tonight. All these people are cramming in there. And you look at all the people outside going in, not a mask to be seen on anybody. And I'm thinking, wow, what are these people doing?
Yeah, it's about promoting responsibility. It's about, all of us in this together to get through it. And it's what we need. It's the only way we're going to get through it. And that's the thing that gives me hope, is that we know that if we do this, that'll work. We're not dealing with a mystery disease that we don't know how to solve. I've worked on several pandemics. I've done tabletop exercises on pandemics, and because I worked in crisis management, so bird flu, swine flu, Ebola, and then this one is, it's in that spot where it's really contagious, but it's not like Ebola. You're not going to die in a matter of days from it, which is dangerous because you can walk around without showing symptoms. But it also means that we could easily get control of it. It's not as visible, so it's a harder sell, I guess. But we are going to wrap up. Last question. So if you could fix one thing from the federal government right now, I guess that's but
let's see. One thing. Let's see. I guess the infighting, I just like to see the cooperation come back. And I don't understand why they can't do that, why they can't get together and, they used to be able to, compromise across the aisle, and it's just a war zone anymore. They did for the first relief effort, but now the second one, again, we're back to, not being able to get something done. That's my grandfather's clock here. Sorry.
I call it the political industrial complex. Like, we have to have this team red, team blue, and whatever it takes for us to succeed on one side at the expense of the other side, regardless of whether it's good policy or bad policy. Frankly, I talk to so many people that are just fed up with both sides for it. And honestly, there has been a lot of intransigence on the Republican side, but we have to fight through that. And that means, particularly on the individual, talking and listening to folks that maybe don't always agree with you.
Right.
In this district where we have a lot of different viewpoints, is how we're actually going to get progress, both from election cycles, but also just making things happen that are going to improve everyone's lives, regardless of whether you're a Republican or Democrat or an independent.
Right.
You know, COVID is nonpartisan.
Yeah.
You know, the environment's nonpartisan. All these things that impact our lives, the things that threaten us or give us opportunities, don't have a political party attached to them. We're the
You
ones.
know, I think one of the bright spots, and I think Kenosha County exudes this, is our politicians do work for us, whether they lean more Republican or Democrat. You know, they just work for us, most of them. They're really good.
Absolutely.
So,
And I
yeah.
know a lot of them personally, so I could attest to that.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
We are so fortunate.
we are fortunate. And we got to wrap up, but just want to remind everyone, we do have an election coming up in a couple days. So August 11th, if you haven't voted already, please get out, vote for Josh Pade, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, keep safe, and hang in there. We're going to get through this. Thank you so much, Mark. And thanks, Doug, previously for joining us. This was a wonderful discussion. Have
Thanks,
a wonderful rest of your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.